Yeah.
Cool. That won't confuse anybody on the audio.
Not at all. Not at all.
Hey, this is the mug I got from Disneyland in the 4th grade.
Let's see.
Nice little goofy mug.
Oh, nice.
Unknown fact about Aaron. I got this one too. That Aaron was a huge Goofy fan growing up. He was my favorite Disney character. So I actually have a bunch of like Goofy stuff. A guy named Bob Haltner at church used to get me Goofy stuff all the time too. He was a cool guy.
Yeah, that's funny. Goofy, huh? We didn't have enough access to Disney as a child for me to be a real fan of.
I really don't know that I did
stuff.
either. To be honest, I don't know. I don't know how that all came about. It's just like one of those things, you know.
So we grew up, my younger years anyway, we grew up in West Texas. We had like, the only time I got to really watch cartoons
Was when I wasn't working on the farm, which was
no
never.
was when I was at grandma's house because she had cable. We just didn't have any reception out where we were. Got a few channels, but
I have a wife home today.
oh, nice.
Wow.
And a child. How was Mother's Day out yesterday?
My heart was broken, man. So last year he did Mother's Day out halfway as we moved here in March. And every day was, you know, oh, I don't want to go, crying, yada yada yada, all this kind of stuff. Held on to me. I kind of had to like make sure he was okay and then dip out real quick. Yesterday, we walk into Mother's Day out. He carries his lunch pail, which I carry, and he just walks into his classroom, puts his lunch pail in his cubby, takes his backpack off. I put his mat down, and he just goes right in at the table and sits down. Doesn't even say goodbye. So then I'm like walking down the hall, and Miss Donna is like, how you doing today, Dad? And I was like, well, Sam just did great, but I don't know that I was ready for him just to like not care. So I spent like the rest of the day in like this weird funk because I was like, what just happened? Did my son just like grow up? He'll be 3 next month.
That's the drawback to raising independent, well-adjusted children.
I can see why so many other people do it the other way. I'm just kidding. That was a bad joke.
I know.
I'll edit that one out.
That is not to say that, you know, anyone who doesn't go like that is not independent and
No.
self-adjusted, but
Not at all.
Sam's got that personality of just as long as he feels right, everything kind of goes. It's like, okay, over here, fine. Over there, fine.
It's amazing how much difference, like after being here just right after we moved, you know, and him having to get used to all these new people to now being here for 6 months.
Right.
And now he knows people, he knows faces, and, you know, he knows other kids. That's the biggest pull for us is that he likes going to Bible class on Sunday mornings. He likes going to Mother's Day out because he sees other kids that he knows. You know. Good morning, Jonathan.
Yeah.
Try to get one more bite of this taco before we start. I need to see if there's a fall countdown video.
Yeah, I was supposed to go this week and change our logos and stuff, but I didn't get it on with your wife's Halloween stuff. So
Yeah. Come on, man.
before we start, speaking of Halloween stuff, did you know Hobby Lobby doesn't sell Halloween decorations anymore?
Really?
Yep.
Is there a reason?
I'm assuming there's a reason. Probably because of the things some people do around Halloween and their disagreement with should Christians celebrate Halloween and stuff. So, anyway, just an interesting thought. And on that note,
Till we're all growing a beard. A man's face should never be bare. We just want some facial hair. We're anticipating, yeah, everyone's waiting for a beard.
hey everybody, welcome to Behind the Beards. Here on Behind the
morning.
Beards, we pull the curtain back, take a look behind the scenes, and try to reveal the things you need to know about your ministers and ministry leaders. I'm Joshua Fowler, a preaching minister in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Baton Rouge.
My partner is Aaron Partlow, Longview, Texas. All right, I was like, man, what's that city he's in now? Like,
Oh boy.
a youth minister.
I
Longview,
believe the
Texas.
show notes say beautiful bearded brother.
It
but
does,
That's okay.
in my-
It's fine.
Beautiful,
just-
bearded brother.
Throw the notes out the window. Who cares about those?
I'm jealous of that beautiful beard right now. This drives me crazy in football season, but I've thought about filing a grievance for an exemption for our association. You know, saying, hey, it's part of my job. I have this podcast called Behind the Beards, and you're making me violate everything, you know, that goes against my job.
And I would be like, well,
making me shave.
sounds like we are seeing behind your beard.
That's true. You
Kind of feel like we should start every podcast by shaving our beards, but
Somebody said that, right? Wasn't that Red who said,
would be
man, I
the-
thought I was going to have some shaving activity
Right.
going on here.
like maybe that's the 5-minute countdown.
You know, we could do like a beard prep video of how to, you know, use the oils and the beard wash. And
Yeah, I'd have to learn how to do that first.
I've learned how to use a straight razor over the last couple of years. So,
That's how you get that nice shine on top of Josh's head. Bing!
yeah, that and bright lights.
All you listening to the audio of this are not
That's
blessed with the halo that is over Josh's head. Some podcasts.
Yeah, when I'm not wearing a cap. So I left my cap at home today. So I've
Yeah,
got
'cause
several.
You
to
probably
choose
don't have one in your in your office at all.
from. I don't have one. I probably have 50.
Speaking of which, our good friend KT spent his last Sunday at the Winsboro Church of Christ. He is currently jobless, in a good way. He's getting married and moving to the same city as his fiancée. But I say all that because he was the keeper of all the Netsis hats, and I went and played frisbee golf with him the other day. And in my car is a giant thing of Netsis Day Camp hats. He was like, I'm out, and you're in, so these are yours. And I was like, well, hold on. So that was kind of funny. I'll probably pass him off to our good friend Alan, who I think is becoming the president of Netsis. I don't know if that's the word. I think it's director, but not this guy, because I've only been here 6 months.
Yeah, we need KT to come on and be our producer here. Still working on that?
Still working on that. I don't know what that looks like, so we'll have to see.
I don't know what that looks like either.
So today's show, we're gonna take a different route, and we're gonna talk about something that is like the fear of a lot of ministry leaders in your congregation, in your church. And I think this is actually a fear that broadens and spreads to almost any profession, right? Any profession this handles to, but for some reason in churches we always have this exception, and that is, being compared to the last guy that was here. And so we were going to talk about that today, and not slamming on anybody. We're not slamming on the church or anything. This is just like the behind the beards kind of an episode. This is like the look in the mirror and reveal and say, hey, if you say that, it might not do as much good as you think it's doing. So, Josh, have you ever, like, our first little thing we have here to talk about is, like, filling the shoes of the last minister.
So
quick
I remember,
thoughts on that.
Yeah, one of the interesting things that we went through at Memorial Road in Edmond when Kent Allen, who had been the preacher there for 25 years,
Yeah.
Stepped down. That was a particular. I don't want to say particularly with preachers, but a lot of times with preachers kind of become, for right or wrong, the face of the church.
Yeah.
And what everyone expects to see. They become the public figure that represents what goes on there. And especially when Kent was an awesome preacher, an awesome minister, an awesome friend. And to do that for 25 years at a large church kind of took something. And so when he left, we had a pretty good sized staff, at the church there. And they just said, hey, you know what? Our staff is going to take turns preaching. And they were advised to go like 1 month for every year of service that your preacher has without a full-time preacher. So
1 month for every year. Okay.
Right. And so we went over 2 years without a full-time preacher.
Whoa.
At a church of
That's
2,500
a
people.
lot of Sundays.
That's a lot of Sundays.
That's a lot of Sundays.
But what it created was, at the end of that 2 years, and early on, everybody was like, oh, man, these guys do a great job, but, man, I really miss Kent. And then it kind of developed to this place where they got to a point where they were like, look, we just want consistency. You guys have done a great job of filling the role, and now we just want consistency. So when the next guy came in, he was consistent, and he was everything that they asked for. I cannot imagine stepping into that pulpit 3 or 4 months after someone who's been there 25 years steps down. Just the pressure of some self, induced, and some unintentionally put on by other people. So yeah, it is really, really hard. And we'll talk about later. It doesn't matter whether it was a good experience or a bad experience previously.
Right.
Coming in and filling a role that's been vacated has a really unique set of challenges.
It really does. It really does. I didn't realize that my lights weren't on. Now you can see me. Yeah, it's amazing, and it's weird. I was advised a lot of times when you step into a new ministry position that you don't come in and with a chainsaw or a scythe and you start hacking and slashing. That you kind of like take the moment to find what's sacred. And I say that in that sense that there are things that are sacred to families, to churches, to people. There are traditions. There are way things have always been done that you just don't come in right away and change, because when you do that, you rub people the wrong way. You hurt relationships. You make it harder for yourself to climb the mountain. It's like going mountain climbing and you're like, you know what I don't need? I don't need chalk. I don't need ropes. It's fine. I'll just climb it without it. And it's like good at the start because you're strong. But as the job wears you down and as you get a little more exhausted, you're like, whoa, it'd be really nice? Chalk. And ropes and things like that to help me. And so the same way, like if you're a new elder, if you're a new deacon, if you're a new minister, if you're a ministry leader at all, and you walk into a new role, you kind of float. You kind of get in there and you kind of learn the ropes. You kind of learn how things are going. And the hardest part about that is that it takes time, right? The hardest part about that is that people are like, oh, well, I floated for like a week and I really learned everything. No, you didn't learn anything that first week. You didn't learn anything that first month. I'm here 6 months at Pine Tree. And what makes me laugh is I can be in a staff meeting and they'll be like, So what do you think we should do, this fall? And I'm like, I don't know what you guys have done the last falls, like I'm still in a season of like, I know it may seem like I've been here a long time, but I haven't, and I haven't experienced a full year. So I don't know what y'all did last year or 2 years ago or 3 years ago, and stuff
Still
like that.
learning.
So you're still learning, you're still growing. And so, do I want to add and bring to? Absolutely. But I'm going to be respectful of the things that have been done in the past and move through those and be very slow at some of this change. And so, with your new minister or your new minister leader that's coming in, that's advice for you guys, is to hop in there and kind of take it a little bit slow, really listen, really learn. It's okay to listen to what the last guy did and kind of keep those afloat for now. Wait to put your spin on things. Just be patient. Make it more about building relationships than it is running your programs or your shows or your kind of things. That's what I would. That's what I would say to that.
Yeah, I remember Artrell Harris from at the time he was at I think 4th Avenue in Topeka. He called me up after I first got here and he said, "Hey, do you have your list?"
Yeah.
And I said, "What list?" He goes, "Everybody has a list of all the things they're going to change when they get somewhere." And I said, and he goes, "Don't lie to me. I know you have a list."
Don't lie to me.
He said, "Here's what I want you to do." He goes, "I want you to take the list." He said, "I don't want you to throw it away, but I want you to put it away."
Yeah.
He said, "Moving a church is like moving an aircraft carrier." He said, "You have to do it very, very slowly." He said, "Now, don't get me wrong." He said, "Don't get me wrong. If there's a torpedo coming, we can move that aircraft carrier immediately.
Right.
But the problem is, if we do that, everything of value on deck is going to be in the ocean."
Yeah.
He said, "And the church is the same way. You can walk in and you can completely change directions with the church you're called to lead. But if you want anything of value to go with you, it's a long, slow process of moving a body." And I just thought that was a beautiful metaphor of how we move and hold the things of value intact as we move to the way that God is calling us. So,
absolutely. And what's valuable about that is wisdom and knowledge being passed on. That a lot of times that kind of wisdom and knowledge doesn't fully get passed on. What's also sad is I can fully understand that younger Aaron would have heard that and been like, maybe for you, but I know how to do it the right way, right? Man, I wish there was a better way to really mature some younger ministry leaders. And it doesn't matter if you are 40 and you just became a shepherd, or you just walked in. Like, that just means you're green. I mean, that means you're young again, walking into that ministry role. And there's so much wisdom and knowledge from somebody who has been doing that ministry role for an extended period of time. The pros and the cons. A little quote here from Jonathan, Germany.
Yeah, this is a unique. I know. Can you look over the top of it?
Yeah, I'll hide behind it. Wordy over here.
A really unique experience when you come in. 2 of the 3 elders are new. Both ministers are new. The secretary is new, and then coming off of a pandemic, there's this environment that's very unique. And people do want anything just to have something, but at the same time, I think that's a place where you have to be really careful that you don't bring something. I think it's easy for us as ministers when we're put in a position like that to maybe take advantage of that position. Mm-hmm. And then getting a church to a point where the people get like 2 months down the road and go, "Oh man, what are we doing? How did we get here?" Like, this is not.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Like, we can find ourselves in a position where people are hungry for change and wanting to do something different. But if you haven't taken the time to test the pH or to really understand like the group that you're working with, they can be like, "Oh yeah, we want you to come in and change. We want you to come in and do this. Yeah, mix it all up." And then 6 months down the road, they wake up out of bed and they go, "I don't even know what church that I'm going to. Like, what is this? This is completely different." Whether it's good or bad, but they find themselves in this place where they wanted so much change, but now all of a sudden it's too much, and they are hungry for, what they know, what was comfortable, and people can get lost that way. And so, yeah, you have to be very careful in those kind of scenarios, because it's really easy. Jonathan, I'm in that same boat here. I walk in to this position, actually, now that we know middle COVID, we thought middle COVID was like 8 months ago.
Not post COVID.
now it's middle COVID, not post. We're still going through it. And people were excited for change. And, I could come in and swing and do all of this stuff and add all this new stuff. But at the end of the day, I still have to figure out what's their identity. Who do they identify as a group? What's passionate? What do they love to do? And things like that. And so, I'm still trying to find the DNA of the Pine Tree Church of Christ, and what really makes them tick. Now, I understand as I say that, our DNA is to be like Christ, but every church is autonomous, and every church is different, and every church has a different flow, and different leaders, different people, because we're all different. And so, trying to be in that, and different sacred things. So my favorite was when I started at Pine Tree. It was right about to be Senior Sunday. And they're like, "Oh, do whatever you want with it," and I was like, "No." What have you done? What have you done? Matter of fact, I was so blessed to have our children's minister, Jill, step up, and she ended up doing about 90% of the work for it, because she had a senior, but also she grew up going to that church as well. So I was like, awesome. Just let me know what I can do to support you in this ministry, because I will put in the hours and do all the tedious laboring and all that kind of stuff. You just let me know, because I don't want a bunch of parents who are angry because their kid didn't get what the last kid got, kind of an idea. So kind of an interesting concept there. I like some of these. It's kind of being protective of those. It's almost like we're protecting those from themselves in the church who are hungry and get excited for this change.
Yeah, and sometimes you need other people to be that parachute for you. When I want to go do this and this, I need someone to say, "Hey, come on back for a minute." But sometimes,
come on back for a minute.
There is an environment where people are wanting to press forward, and you might have to be the one that says, "Hold on, we need to really consider the long term, effects of what's going on, and pray on it, and make sure this is something that the Spirit of God is leading us towards, and not just something that we want to do." So it's good stuff. I like some of the phrases you have down here to
that I have down. I just comment out there.
Yeah, no, I think they're great, and if you hadn't written them, I would. But I'm giving you props.
There's a lot of them here. There's a lot of them here that that we hear, even being at a church for 4 or 5 years, or 6 or 7 years. You still will hear some of these phrases. Some of them might be said in a meaningful manner. Some of them might be said trying to praise you, but it's the wrong mindset that we need to have, right? Yeah. So we have here some phrases to stay away from when talking to your ministry leaders, right? The first one was, "Hey, the last minister always did this for me," right? Have you ever heard that one, Josh?
I have. I've heard that one frequently.
Okay. I would say that I make a good solid 40%. 35%.
You have, especially lately. You have done a lot of the show notes. Now that you've gotten settled down in your new place.
Oh yeah, sorry that it was difficult for me when I was moving countries. Is what it felt like.
Or at Topeka, and anyway.
Okay.
In the middle of a pandemic. Anyway, the last guy, well, John always did this, right? John always did this. It's yeah, I'm sure John did always do that. But guess what? I'm not John.
That's right.
And so I will do a lot of those things, but I'm not going to do it just because someone else does it. Sometimes that can feel, especially as a minister, that whether it's intended to or not, it feels manipulative.
Yeah.
It feels like someone is trying to get me to do something just because either someone else doesn't want to do it or there's this expectation. I would say
Well, and
instead of saying,
it feels demeaning too. A lot of times, like, hey, you will never live up to the standard of this last person. It's that same idea that you were talking about. Boy, how would you like to walk into a preaching job after somebody's preached for, you know, 40 years, from that pulpit? Like, how are you gonna fill those roles? And that's a filler job because you're preparing the way for the next guy.
yeah,
And that's unfortunate and that's sad. And so when we use phrases like that, hey, the last minister always did this for me, or the last minister always did this, it's hard. It's hard to hear, and it's kind of sometimes hard to have a response back to that.
yeah. And so I think maybe we can say, a better way to say that is to say, hey, in the past, this is kind of the way things have been done. And this is the value that has come from doing it that way. Are you comfortable with continuing on in that role? And so that comes across now as, so it gives me the choice basically to choose that, because I see the benefit that comes from it, even though it might be based on just kind of a habit or a practice. But here's the value that comes from having our minister in this role at this time. And this is what the people love to see from the preacher. And these are the relationships that he was able to build by doing this or that. And I think that's just a good, positive way of saying the same thing, but bringing it in a spirit that is, much more easy for us to get on board with, because it's not a comparison role here.
Right.
And it doesn't come across as comparison. It comes across as, this is what we've always done in the past. This is why we've done it. Man, are you cool with that? It's like, yeah, man, sure I am.
Well, it also reminds me of maybe even saying it in a sense of, hey, would you be interested in taking up this role or doing it or doing this, kind of a phrase, like just leave the last guy out of it, which leads us into the next one, which is, hey, the last guy never did anything. We are so glad that you are here. Man, that one hits me, and to be honest, like it makes me sad to think like, oh man, are people saying that about me? Like, am I past ministry jobs? I don't know. For me, that one hits me in a sour note because, like, let's move forward. Let's move past it. Let's not bash on the last guy. I'm thankful for the praise. I'm glad that you enjoy what I've added, or your ministry leader is probably happy that you're enjoying what they're doing. But we don't need to be in the business of driving buses over other people, right?
Yeah, and you can leave the qualification off, right?
Yeah. We're just so glad you're here.
Yeah, whether or not the last guy was awesome or less than awesome is irrelevant to the fact that we are really glad you're here.
Yeah.
And we are really looking forward to the new life that you're going to bring to whatever ministry it is that you're called to serve.
Because even then, that falls into that roadmap of comparing you to the last person, comparing that ministry leader to the last person who was in that role.
Yeah. Well, and ultimately, it right off the bat, it has a way of eroding trust.
Yeah.
And I find this in myself. I mean, I love to make people laugh, and a lot of time, it's just so easy to make people laugh at other people's expense.
Right.
Especially when some people in life make it so easy.
Right. Yeah. Like me.
And not like you. There's something else going through my mind. But the fact is, when you do that, so it's funny, and then you laugh, and then they laugh, and then the next time they go to do something, there's this thought of, oh, well, if I put this out there, am I going to be the brunt of the next joke?
Right.
And so that mentality comes in, and even as ministers, as confident as we may be, sometimes as ego-driven as we are, our personalities are at times.
Right.
We can be so insecure, and that can lead to a lack of trust when we have that kind of a phrase that starts. So let's just stick with the positive. avoid the negative,
Yeah,
and let's just say, hey, let's, like you said a second ago, let's move forward.
that's right.
Always moving forward, always looking forward, learning from our past, but we're always looking forward.
Right.
Because Aaron would have never done anything like that, right?
Right. Aaron would have
Aaron would have never done something like that.
That's right.
What was going through your mind when you wrote that statement down?
I
Blank
was
would have
thinking,
never-
I don't know. Like, I was just thinking, like, if somebody, like, gets really, when somebody gets perturbed, when they get upset with another ministry leader, like, your first initial goal, and I guess maybe I was thinking of elders in this sense, is to say, well, that shepherd would have never done that, or he would have never allowed that to happen, and there's that immediate comparison, and so the past guy was better than you, or the guy who retired, or the guy who can no longer do the job, and so you'll never be able to fill those kind of roles, those shoes. That's kind of what I was thinking there. Again, we're headed to a dark place. We're headed to a place that we shouldn't be. We're comparing two people. As if you have watched this show ever, you know that there is a lot more to leading a ministry than what meets the eye. And there's a lot of stress, and there's a lot of everything that kind of plays into it. And so, like, having to look over your shoulder and second guess every step that you take, because there might be somebody who is saying, well, the last guy would never do that. That's difficult, and that's hard, and it can stop us from wanting to move forward or to change or to be in that place where we can do something different and move forward.
Yeah. The conversation I've had around that has actually not been with my own members here, but with former members who have moved away, but still have, high regard for, because they aren't here by choice. They're not here because they moved to another state.
Right.
And, one of them revolves around TikTok that gets shared. And, a couple of the people have come back and said, it's just not appropriate to be in that platform. And so I get to explain to them all the different conversations that I have, the way that we reach, young people in the mediums where they are, and the kind of things, the conversations that are started just by the knowledge of being some. And then someone says, "Oh, you're a preacher and you're on TikTok?" It's like, yeah, not as much as some are, but I'm there and I understand who they are, where they're coming from, what they're being influenced by, and I can speak in their language. And it takes some conversations around those things. They still don't like it, but they understand the value of it. So that's but I've actually had that one over the last year. It's like, oh, so and so never would have done that. Never would have done that. That exact phrase has come out of someone's mouth, and it's like, I know they wouldn't, and that's okay, because that wasn't their way of doing things, and they were very good at what they did. If I was going to try to step into the role that they left exactly like they did, I would do it so poorly because I'm not suited for that. And it's important to move forward, right? It's important to have that fresh start.
It's super important. And so, like, that's one of the things that we want to talk about today also is why is it important to have that fresh start? Why is it important to allow ministry leaders, new youth ministers, new preachers, allow them to have that fresh start and that concept? So, why is it important for churches to have fresh starts? I was told by a shepherd who'd been shepherding a long time, and he said, it's okay to let some of these old programs just die out. Everything dies out. Everything, every ministry kind of will die out, and that's how you start and get fresh new ministries. I was also told, that every time you add something to the calendar, you are taking away something else. And at some point you run out of weeks, I've been at some churches where, like, every single day, every single week of summer, they had something going on. Like the youth group was doing something. And I went, how do you live? How do you maintain that lifestyle? And so sometimes we need to allow stuff to have been done and let it stay back there so that we can move forward and try and do new things, right? That's what this pandemic has really done for a lot of us, is it has, allowed a lot of things that needed to die off, and allow us to start and create some new fresh spaces. So for churches, a lot of times in order to start a new ministry, you have to take away from another one, and some of those fresh starts can be born from that. And so we need to, we have to allow those to happen, right? What do you think, Josh, on that?
Yeah, I think it's important for churches and for ministers both, and I think they kind of run along the same lines.
Yeah.
That we just have a tendency to just do what's comfortable. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes what's comfortable is not what's beneficial.
Yeah.
What's really comfortable for me is to just eat fast food, because it's
okay.
I don't want to say it's cheap, but it's easy. It's always there. I pass a whole bunch of them along the road.
It always tastes the same.
It does always taste the same.
Which is almost good. Well, it is
good. I would say immediately really good.
Yes.
Immediately really later, good. I'm hurting. My stomach is full. I'm, kind of feeling a little guilty because I know I shouldn't have eaten it. Preparing meals ahead of time is hard. But every once in a while, somebody comes in and kind of gives you something fresh, and it's like, hey, you know what? That's a really good. I can actually do that. That's easy, and I can move myself into a healthier habit. Otherwise, if we don't have someone to bring us some fresh perspective, we're just going to continue to do the same old things. Mm-hmm. And some of those things are good for us. Some of those things are not good for us. And that's true as a church as well. As ministers as well. When we come in, we need to realize that new environment brings new possibilities,
right,
and also new perspectives. All those classes that I taught to those other churches and those other people, I might use those for resources to build new classes, but I need to resist the temptation to just retread old tires.
Yeah.
And run them back, but to really look at who is in front of me. Because now then, not only do I get to know new people, but I start to open up God's word and I see them through the eyes of new people. And God's word comes alive in different ways than it did before. And that's how we grow and mature as ministers as well, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think, I had a really good something I was going to say, and I lost it there in the last minute. So how do we've talked a lot about, ministers and what they should do when they start a new position, when they start a new job, or anything like that. So how does a church accept? How should you really move through the motions of accepting a new preacher, a new elder, a new deacon, a new youth minister, a new children's minister? What are some of those key factors in our eyes, since we're both ministers, that would make taking a new job a lot easier, or on that transition period? And I would say, to start us off, to let Josh think about that a little bit, since it's not on the show notes, would be what's really nice is having a calendar of knowing what's been done in the past, and that's kind of always helpful. Getting encouragement of that we are doing an excellent job. Like we said, that one up there, we're so glad that you're here, and being thankful for being there. It's really hard for a new minister. Okay, this is a new minister. This is not someone becoming a new shepherd, because hopefully they already know everybody in their congregation when they're becoming a shepherd. So it's not like a get to know your shepherd, because you should already know your shepherd, and that's why they're a shepherd. Because you should be shepherding before you become a shepherd, right? But taking those moments to have that minister over to your house for food, conversing with them, talking with them. That helps ease that motion of change, because a lot of new ministers, when you start a new job, you're in a foreign country, you're in a foreign territory, you don't know a lot of people. You're going to get to know. There's going to be a good group of people who are excited that you're there, that you're really going to get to know, but there's going to be a large majority of people that you're going to be working on all year so that you get to know and have relationships with everybody. And so as a church family, if you could already organize and be ready to say, hey, we'd love for you to have dinner with us, or we'd love to take you out to lunch, or we'd love to do this, and organizing and being there. Also being receptive to helping somebody know in a positive spin, not in a negative way, but what has been done. Being open to change, of course, is always nice. But informing and being willing to maybe step up and help lead in those ministry roles while the person is getting traction, right?
Yeah, and I think that works for elders as well, because even though elders have been a part of a church and probably know all the people,
Right.
they're stepping into a role that has a tendency to be isolating. And so the quicker you can begin to create or foster those friendships,
Right.
prevents that isolation from occurring.
That's true.
From your shepherds. So I think it's valuable advice no matter what. For me, I want to be heard.
Yeah.
And I want to know that I'm heard. So, if we're getting started on a new position, I want my elders, I want my people, my deacons. If it's a youth ministry, I want my parents to come in and just say, hey, if you could start from scratch today, what is your vision of the future? Now that you are here, what do you envision your ministry looking like? Hopefully, as ministers anyway, hopefully that's a part of the hiring process. Mm-hmm. But once it becomes real, and now that you've had just a short time to get to know some people and to see the space, and you've been here a couple of Sundays, now then let's sit down and talk about, if you could, what would be your vision for the future? And use that as a launching point of, what is the path to achieve your vision from where we are to where you want to be. Mm-hmm. The ironic thing in the church is we are notoriously bad communicators.
Right. Yeah. That's a big part.
And
That's
it's
huge.
And I don't know if it's because we put out so much information, but I send out my emails through MailChimp, and I send out an email every Tuesday and every Thursday. Tuesday is like news and prayers. Thursday is the bulletin and the big prayer list. And without fail, every week there are at least 65% of my emails that are unopened.
Right.
And so I don't know if it's because we are just so inundated with information that there's a lot that just goes unnoticed.
It's interesting that we talk about that, because there's like two sides of that scale, and people like float within that. You have the people who want an email like every single day with all the information, because even though you told them yesterday, they want you to tell them again today, because what if it's different? Well, then I would communicate if it was different. But so you have people who are like that, and then you have people who will never open your email, who will never know what's going on, because that's where they are invested. And then you have a lot of people who float in the middle, who and so it's, how do you hit all of those groups of people in communication? I mean, and I think that causes exactly what you say. Like if I get spammed, right? I mean, this is like a big this is a sidebar. This is a big social media thing for you, is that they say to post once or twice, that's it, during the hot times for social media. But not more than that, because if you start to spam, and if you're blowing up somebody's feed and you're always on it constantly, they will stop looking at your posts and you become filler content.
Right. Well, and what I was getting to with that was, early on, when I was here, I put out, before I even got here, I said, hey, here is what I plan to do for the end of this year, and then here's what I plan to do next year. And I had everything. I had made up, all of the graphics, all the titles, and I didn't have the whole year planned out, but I had a pattern of where to go. And I got here in September. In December, I got ready to introduce the theme of the next year, and one of my guys came and said, we need to change this because I'm really not comfortable with this title. And it's like, I sent this to you 7 months ago.
Right.
And now that I'm ready to launch it, I had all the books made up. I had the logos made. And, and so, the communication comes in. I want the freedom to give you the input, but I also want to know that I've been heard. Even if we don't go with it and there is something you want me to do differently, I just want to know that I've been heard from the beginning, because that's how we all move forward on the same foot, is just to listen and to be heard, and then say, how can we get from where we are to the new vision that we've created together?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I have a vision and they have a vision, and somehow we have to come together to create a vision that we have seen together on what God is doing and asking us to do. So
yeah. Ministers, be respectful of people's time. Other people, be respectful of ministers' time. If you put a lot of time and effort into a program or into some other stuff, and you choose to wait that long to bring it up, that's borderline rude. In the same way, ministers have to respect the fact that other people have full-time jobs and they have to have family time, and some other stuff like that. And so,
hey,
so we have
tables,
to.
Man.
I know we have to balance it, but at the same time, people need to respect the amount of work that a minister does for a sermon series, that a minister does for, a program or an event. And if you choose to wait last minute, then you chose, sorry, the airplane doors have closed and the plane has already taken off. So it's kind of interesting. So I'd say my behind the beards moment for today would be a simple, easy, most Christian thing that you could probably do. And so I tell my teens this probably every other month. There's a lot of things I just try to hammer into my teens every other month so that maybe it'll stick by the time they graduate. Is giving people the benefit of the doubt, right? When we give people the benefit of the doubt, and we're letting ministry leaders find their feet, and we're letting elders find their feet, and we're giving people that grace and that mercy, then we are more focused on the bigger picture and what's going on and what's happening, opposed to the immediate and what I want and what I need right now kind of mentality and idea. A lot of flowers are really ugly when they're in their bud state. But when they bloom, they're beautiful, and we have to give it that benefit of the doubt. We got to give it that patience, and we got to nurture it and take care of it. That goes for our ministry leaders and ministers. That goes for your congregation as well. A lot of congregations right now are budding up. They've been through a lot, and we're trying to go through a lot, and it just takes time. That's the biggest thing, guys, is that all of this just takes time. The most valuable thing that we have. All of this is learning. All of this is new. It's new to a minister who's starting a new position. It's new to a church who is getting used to that other person. Change needs to happen in the church. We understand that. We know that. I think next week we might even focus and talk about the fear of change. We'll see. But it just takes time. And we need to be peacemakers and work through that, and hold everybody's hands and kind of walk through that. So we want to thank you guys for being here today. We truly do appreciate. We love that you guys listen to this podcast. We will remind you of something super important to us. Galatians 6:9. Don't grow weary in doing good. This world is messy. This life is messy. So allow Christ to use you to do something different, something good in His name. I'm Aaron, and this is Josh, and we'll see you next week on Behind the Beards.
Till we're all growing a beard. A man's face should never be bare. We just want some facial hair. We're anticipating, yeah, everyone's waiting for a beard.
Your house gets so quiet when your air conditioner kicks off.
Yeah, I know. Dude, I did a bad thing again.